Welcome to another episode of React and TypeScript tutorial series. In this video, we're going to learn about forms in React. If I just search login forms or any type of forms, you can find a lot of different images like this one. So this is just one basic form. In HTML, it's really easy to write a form. You just have to write a form tag and then you can use some input fields and some buttons, right? In React, it is quite similar, but there are something you need to know while writing forms in React. So let's start with writing one basic forms. So I'm creating one file named maybe login form tsx. Okay, in this file, we're going to create our forms. So first of all, whenever you're writing a new file in React, you have to import React, and then I'm going to create one component called login form. And you know that in React, every component is a function. So I'm writing one function, and as I'm using TypeScript, I have to add a return type here. So let's add the return type jsx.element, and the login form will return one JSX component. So in HTML, we write form element, right? In React also, we can do the same. You have to write a form, and inside that, let's say I have one input, and input name is username, export default login form. So this is one basic component. I'm going to use this component in our app.tsx file and then write login form. Of course, you have to import this login form. I have imported it in the first line. The file name should be F capital here. So I can see just one simple input element. Of course, I need a submit button. So let's add the submit button here. A button called submit. All right, now we have one username field and one submit button. Now definitely you can add something in this input box. Let's say my username is username and then submit. So this is just a basic form. Now here comes the problem. Suppose we want to have some initial value in the form, right? So in the input name username, let's say I want to add the username as admin initially. So what do? In every input element, you know that there's a property called value. So if I add value equals to admin, now if I refresh the page, you can see we are having this admin listed. But there's a problem here. The thing is, you cannot change this value. I'm trying to type something, it's not working. I'm trying to delete something, I'm trying to delete this, and it is not working. So why is that happening? As you know that in React, we write our component declaratively. Means, okay, I created one video about this declarative and imperative programming. Okay, let's watch that video. Because there are two types of programming. Imperative programming, where you write step-by-step instructions to solve a problem. You define what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve that. Another type of programming is declarative programming, where you define what you want to achieve without specifying how. Yeah, so that is the key thing. In declarative programming, we write what we want to achieve. So here we are writing we want to get one form, right? And the form's value will be admin. We are not saying when the value will be admin, correct? So that means the value of this input box will always be admin, correct? So that is the problem here. But how to solve it? We have to make this value dynamic. So we need another state, right? In this login form, because suppose I'm changing this value, that means the state of the form is changing, the state of the login component is changing. We have to capture that in some state, right? In my last video, I already discussed about use state. Using use state, you can store some states in the component, so we can use that. So we can write a state called username state, username, and we need some setter function, set username equals to use state, and the initial value will be admin. All right, here the value is going to be username. set username is not being used here. Okay, let's remove that and see. Right, now you can see the initial value is admin, but still now if I try to change it, I'm not able to change it. The reason is that I'm kind of hard coding this value username. I have used one state called username, but I'm not actually updating the state. So let's update the state as well, right? uh, Username, then set username is the function to set the username. To set the username, we can capture the changes in the input, right? So we can have one function called handle change. So there's a change event handler here in the input. So on change, I can call one function. So in that function, I can use the set username. How can I get the value of this input? From the event that we get here, target.value. So event.target will point to this DOM element, not this DOM element, it will point to the actual DOM element that React is going to render. Now see, I can update the field. Now one advantage of using this kind of state is that as it is available as a state, you can programmatically change it, right? You can programmatically change the state. Now suppose I can add another input field, and in this input field I don't need the change handler. I can only use the state username. So what will happen in this case? No matter what we type in the username field, that will be reflected in the second field as well. Now say if I update it, the second field will also change, but you cannot change the second field actually. So the thing is that as we have the state in this login form component, you can programmatically set the value, right? You have this username field, you can programmatically set the value. Now if you have multiple form fields, then definitely you have to write different states. That is some compromise you have to do if you're using React, unless you're using some kind of libraries. Like there are some libraries for form handling, like Formic is one. I can show that. Formic is one library that you can use to simplify this kind of state handling. So suppose you have 10 different fields in your form, then you have to use 10 different states, and you have to write 10 different handlers, change handlers, right? So that's why this Formic, they came up with some library that you can see that it's very popular library. A lot of companies are using it. I have personally used it in one of the projects, so I will explain that later. But let's learn about the basic React form first. Okay. So the next point is how will you submit the form when you click on the submit button, right? So this form element will have one submit, this on submit event handler is there. You can write a function over here. Inside this function, you can access the form. So I'm going to just alert whatever is there in the form. Let's say username is there. Now I'm clicking on submit, is going to show one pop-up with whatever is there in the username. Now if I change the username, then click on submit, you can see we are showing the username. So these type of forms are called controlled forms or controlled fields if you are talking about the field, because here we can control the field's value, right, using this state. React is also giving an option to write uncontrolled forms or uncontrolled fields. So uncontrolled means you cannot control the properties of your fields. That is also possible. If you don't want to write all those things, all these states, you can. So, okay, let's remove the states. All right, let's remove all the states from here. I just have one input called username. Let's remove this as well. Okay, I have just one input called username. Refresh the page. I have a basic form, you can type anything. See, React is not restricting me to type anything because I have not added the value property, right? And if I'm not adding any value, then React will just create the input element and the browser will decide what to show. So in this case, we cannot control the input state. But default value, but if you want to add one initial value, React has provided some property called default value. I can write default value as admin. So this is only the initial value. It is not like, this is not a state. You cannot change the state of the form. Now if I refresh, you have admin as default. I can then update it. Now another question is that how can we access the value if we don't have the state here? How can we access the value? So for that, when you're submitting the form, then you have the event object, current target, then username, I think. Yeah. So if I alert this value, okay, username dot value. Yep. When I click on submit, we are getting the event dot target, current target as the form DOM element. Then we're accessing the value like this. So this is one way to write a form in React. If you're not having any complicated forms, complicated state management, then you can use this type of forms as well. Now, one last point I need to remember when you're using forms, that when you click on submit, you can see that the page is refreshing, right? If you add something, click on submit, page is refreshing. So this is the basic submit behavior of any form, because long time back when we used mostly server technologies like JSP or PHP, that time we used to refresh the page every time we submit, right? But now things are different. Now we are using single page apps and we're not actually re-rendering the pages every time you click on submit. So for that, what you can do is in submit handler, you can add like, you can prevent that refresh behavior using dot prevent default. So this line is going to stop the form refresh, okay, page refresh. Let's try that. Now the page is not refreshing. Alright, so this was the simple form tutorial in React. If you have any questions, then please ask in the comment section. I'll try to answer all of them. And if you're really liking the series, then you can definitely subscribe to this channel so that you can get notified to all the upcoming videos that I'm going to make. And that is going to help me a lot to keep making this type of videos. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.